Back. I hope you guys all had a good quick caffeine shot or two at the break. We've got some very interesting panel discussions that are coming up. The next panel discussions, all of them are my favorite, of course, but this one hits particularly home relative to the activities that are taking place in Ireland around agriculture and technology coming together and really looking at solving some of the challenges of food production, solving some of the opportunities for operational efficiency, and gathering a lot more insight and information around agriculture technology. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage for this next session around the AgTech Revolution, Reinventing the Farm, Mr. Paul Noglos from Forbes as the moderator. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Carolyn Keeling, the CEO of Keelings. Hey, Carolyn. Pat Casey, the CIO of the Kerry Group. Pat. Nora Caldi, founder and CSO of Neuratos. Hello, Nora. And last but not least, Dennis Donahue, President, Royal Rose LLC. Great. And I'd also like to call to the stage to give a little bit of an overview and some context, Mr. Pat Smith with the IFA. And of course, Mr. John Hartnett will be joining. John's going to give a bit of an overview and perspective from some of the activities that have been taking place in California, as well as kind of a macro overview of the AgTech capability. So John, let me turn it over to you and Pat.
Thanks, Chris. And Pat and I are going to do a tag team here. Why did we get involved in ag? Why is agriculture important, and why is the time now? We got involved in agriculture in Silicon Valley about 3 years ago. Everybody knows about Silicon Valley, but not many people realize it's surrounded by the fresh food capital of the world. Just 1 hour south of Silicon Valley is basically the fresh capital of the United States, fresh capital probably of the world. Some of the biggest companies in the ag industry or the food industry, people like Driscoll, Dole, Taylor Farms, etc., all major multi-billion-dollar and very successful companies. The interesting dilemma there is they're 1 hour south of Silicon Valley, but they might as well be on the other side of the planet, because unfortunately the ag industry really wasn't communicating and really kind of working well with the technology industry. Likewise, on the technology side, it's exactly the same thing. And you can't solve problems if you're not actually collaborating and working with the industry and the space. So, in terms of just a macro picture, there's three amazing things, that is happening right now in this whole ag and food area. And just to, I know when everybody hears about ag and farm, they automatically go to, fields, tractors, trailers. But think about the whole destination of food from basically from the field to the fork of the consumer. That's really where we kind of looked at this. The world's population is going to grow from 7 billion people to 9.5 billion people by 2050. The most interesting part of that stat is middle class. Middle class today represents about 1.2, 1.5 billion people worldwide. That's going to grow to 4.5 billion people by 2050. So that's the biggest shift in the history of this planet in terms of just pure demand. Also, in terms of that demographic, like us, all very savvy in terms of the connection between health and food. What we eat is a key part of our fitness and our health. So the decisions that are being made are decisions around key decisions about what you're eating in terms of either what proteins, what you're eating in terms of fresh foods, etc. And then also from a technology perspective, you've got the power of a smartphone in your hand, and you can see and learn where every piece of information came from, but yet we're not in a position today to be able to understand where did the food come from. Is it really organic or not? Or where is all this information going in the system? And then finally, in terms of the industry, in terms of technology, I think we've heard the Internet of Things is the biggest mega trend that's going to affect us. Between now and 2050, there's disputed to be 50 billion devices connected. It's expected to be an $8 trillion business worldwide. It's definitely getting all the noise, all the attention in terms of connected devices. And it's not connected devices like the screens and the tablets that we're connected to today. It's everything, whether it's in our home, whether it's a tractor, whether it's a trailer, whether it's a truck delivering food. All these things are going to be connected in the future. So this perfect storm that we're kind of dealing with regard to a massive demand opportunity. You've got supply challenges in terms of reduction in land, water challenges in Ireland. I know are very different in California, but water in California is very expensive, and we've had a drought for the last 4 years. It's probably the single biggest thing. So solving these kind of problems, will only happen with regard to innovation. So just wanted to kind of give that quick tee up, and also thank our panelists to be part of the event today. Pat and I met in Washington very recently. He pushed me out of the way to meet President Obama. I'm just joking, Pat. But I thought, in order to try and kind of set the frame in Ireland in terms of the farm industry, I wanted Pat to say a few words in terms of, basically the ag industry in Ireland, just kind of set the stage in terms of what we're doing here.
Yeah. John, ladies and gentlemen, delighted to be here today. And certainly our organisation is 60 years today. And the founding fathers, if they thought that their chief executive would be sitting in front of a tech conference, they'd have fired him on the spot. So I hope my current bosses basically will think more kindly of it. But just for a couple of minutes, from a farmer's perspective, farmers have been huge adapters of technology and innovation over the generations. And we just published a book recently, and one of an interesting statistic which sticks with me. In 1955, our sales of whole milk powder and butter were less than £1 million out of this country. And in that year we exported 1.2 million pounds worth of rabbit meat. 40% of the workforce were from agriculture, and 40% of our people, particularly in rural Ireland, never went to secondary school. So in all of 50 years, as evidence of the adaptation of technology, this year Ireland hopes to export €10.5 billion worth of exports across the world, mainly in beef and dairy products, to about 150 countries. We have 300,000 people employed in the industry, and from a farm family perspective, they put and anyone that in the IT sector, and I'm sure there's people from a farming background here, farm families put education very top of their agenda. So technology is hugely important, right away from the tractors, the trailers, all the rest of it. But where we stand today, as John said, and where we're going, there's certainly an opportunity, I believe, in the whole area of the Internet of Things to basically try and help farmers better do their job and do it more cost effectively. But I think in the context of where you're going and whatever ideas you people have to try and help the farming community, it must be the Internet of relevance. Because the Internet of Things and gadgets can all be very good and very well, but unless they're going to save a farmer money or they're going to save him time, I think we need to think long and hard, or they're going to increase production. I think we need to think long and hard about what we're doing. So in the context of this conference here today, and I know you have Minister Noonan in the afternoon, whom we have a lot of engagement with, there's 4 things that I believe has to happen if the Internet of Things is to be as successful as we believe in IFA it can be. Because certainly we see a revolution happening in the whole area of communications, particularly the smartphone. Farmers are mobile people, and in the context of our own industry, we have nearly 50,000 people up on an iFarm app to provide information to our members on a day-to-day basis. So we see it as hugely important, and it's just incredible to think what's happened in the last 4 years, and nobody really can envisage what's going to happen in the next 4. But these are a few things that I believe and farmers believe needs to happen. Firstly, broadband, connectivity. Out across rural Ireland, farmers are entrepreneurs in their own right, their families in their own right, and certainly the government initiative on rural broadband has to succeed this time and has to provide fibre broadband to the homes and businesses of rural Ireland. That's a number 1. In the context of what you do, And what the industry does, as I said earlier, it must have a cost benefit. There must be a return. Gimmicks for the sake of gimmicks is not going to wash or not going to work. And the other thing from a farmer's perspective, in my experience of working with farmers, it must be simple and easy to use, and there must be a safety element to it. And one of the concerns that we have as farmers today is the safety, I suppose, the safety record on our farms. There's a lot of tragedy, and certainly the smartphone or the phone needs to be turned off when people are doing their work on a day-to-day basis. And finally, in the context of what needs to happen, there needs to be empowerment, and there needs to be a lot of resources put into helping people. It's interesting that we have farmers coming to us now to do a course on internet banking, to basically see how they can use this technology to help them do their business on a day-to-day basis. So I think the conference is timely. I think the opportunity is great. The challenge from a farming perspective is to make a profit, and the challenge from your perspective is to help them do that. So I wish the conference well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pat. And before I hand it over to Paul Nodlows, Paul and I met for the first time about a year and a half ago, going back to the conversation I mentioned earlier around the whole AgTech area in Silicon Valley. Paul runs a major summit for Forbes called Reinventing America. We had a great discussion about what the backbone of the United States is, and I think we identified that food and agriculture is still the backbone of the United States. And last year we ran an Ag Summit in Monterey, where Paul and the team from Forbes participated at that. And this year in July 8th and 9th in downtown Salinas, Forbes Media are going to run the largest AgTech Summit in the United States, and I'm delighted that Paul travelled here from New York to moderate this panel, and I'll hand it over to Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, John. I thought we'll try to make the most use of our time. I'm going to let each of the panelists just introduce themselves in like 45 seconds or less. You just heard who I am. I'm going to turn it over to Dennis.
I'm Dennis Donahue. I'm the president of Royal Rose LLC. We're a specialty vegetable grower shipper based out of Salinas, California, and once upon a time I was also the mayor of Salinas from 2006 to 2012, the fresh nerve center of the planet. And from day one my goal was to connect the Salinas Valley with the Silicon Valley, and I wandered up to San Jose and met Mr. Hartnett, and from our perspective the rest is history.
Great. Caroline?
I'm Caroline Keeling. I'm the CEO of Keelings. We're a family business, third generation. Started growing horticultural products in North County Dublin, a couple of miles from here. We've expanded now our own production, but also we source globally, and we supply markets in Ireland, UK, Europe, and a little bit into Asia we're just breaking into. And also we developed our own ERP system to run and manage our own business, and we've launched that in 2012, and we're licensing that software in Europe and in China.
Great. Pat?
I'm Pat Casey, the CIO at Kerry Group. I've been with Kerry for over 30 years now. As I'm sure many of you know, Kerry started in down County Kerry, very small operation there, grew locally in Kerry, then nationally, and now today an international organization. We're manufacturing in about 25 countries worldwide. We have about 130 manufacturing sites. We sell into 100 countries. We have 25,000 people, and today's turnover is close to 6 billion euros. We are two parts to our business. We've got the food business here in Ireland and the UK, which is making dairy products and meat products into the retail business. But the big part of our business is the whole ingredients and flavors, or taste and nutrition, which is worldwide, serving into all the major food and beverage companies around the world.
Great. I'm thrilled that we can attack this conversation from a lot of different directions. I'm now going to turn it over to Nora Caldy. Nora is the founder and CSO of a startup called Neuritas. And Neuritas is also a Thrive Accelerator company that John Hartnett, the Thrive Accelerator, is based in Salinas, California. And we're going to give Nora a little bit more time because we're going to actually let her explain the startup. And I think we have a video.
Yeah, so my name is Nora Caldy. I'm the founder of Neuritas and in charge now of the science part of Neuritas. So before I hit you with the science, I just want to kind of explain a little bit the background. So 1 in 3 people in this room suffer from chronic disease or metabolic disorders. And this is just going to go and increase. There's a huge urgency to find new ways to stop these diseases from increasing, to prevent and manage them. And the good thing is that research in the past 8 years has shown that food, very specific food molecules, can actually reduce these risks, manage and prevent these diseases. The real problem and the real challenge is that identifying these molecules using the current technologies is impossible. It's very time consuming, it takes years and millions. What Neuritas is doing is introducing new technologies, it's introducing machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we're looking at food in a very different way. We're looking at food at the molecular level and identifying new, completely new therapeutic molecules from food that are going to tackle these diseases. So in the past 8 months, we've discovered about 20 novel ingredients, one of which, for example, lowers inflammation, which is at the basis of every disease. And this is using our technology. Other ones, for example, are good for regulating blood glucose. So that means that they're good for diabetics and pre-diabetics. This means that this ingredient now can be formulated in a cereal bar that a pre-diabetic and a diabetic can consume to manage and prevent their diabetes. It would have taken the industry about 800 million and back-to-back about 100 years to do what we have done in less than 8 months using our technology. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do, and I'll talk more later.
Terrific. I'm really interested in how the AgTech revolution that's taking place on a global basis, I think it'd be interesting for our speakers to talk about how it's impacting all the way up from the lowest level of life on a farm. Caroline, you come from a third-generation farming family. Yeah. How has AgTech impacted your life, even on a daily basis?
I think, you know, little things that you'd sort of say can make life easier. So I know my father and his brothers and sisters used to have to get up every Sunday morning and open the vents of the glasshouse if they were sunny. Seeing as we have about 20 hectares of vents, I think my nieces and nephews are pretty glad they don't have to do that on a Sunday morning. So everything is automated now, but it means, you know, the yields, every year we improve our yield production. So if you look at our glasshouses in Ireland, they're set at different levels than in Holland. In Holland it's sunny or cloudy, but anybody who's experienced Irish weather will know that we have about 4 seasons a day. So the programs that run in Ireland are different than the rest of the world because of our weather patterns. And
are you starting to see the Internet of Things, and are you starting to see advanced sensors and the like starting to have a real impact on the farm? Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of things as well from you know, getting the product from the farm to the consumer. And there's an awful lot of technology getting involved in that now. And, you know, one of the big things that we see coming forward is we do have a lot of farm information. And, you know, there's an awful lot of information and about the product that we're growing and, you know, the safety of it and all that kind of thing. And the consumer is very interested. And it's how we connect that consumer with the food, I think, is going to become more and more prevalent, that people will want to be able to access where their food came from. And I think that's going to be really beneficial for farms. It's one of the things that we're trying to do with our own business, in that we have our own software and we have a brand, and it's how we connect with the consumer is something we're working very hard on. It's interesting you brought up traceability. I know in talking to Pat last night, I know this has been an incredibly important issue for a multinational company like Kerry's. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what it's meant?
Yeah, of course, traceability is very important for food companies and pharmaceutical companies, and this has been going on. You know, we've had the food scares and so on, and thankfully get to the source of it very quickly. But the game is changing now insofar as the consumer, as Caroline says, wants to know where has this come from as they are consuming the food. So it's being more proactive than reactive when the problem happens. And I think there's where there's a great opportunity in the Internet of Things. We already see out in the farm where this is happening. My neighbour down in Kerry has put in a total automated milking parlour. And he can now detect, as the cow is milking, if the cell count and so on and so forth, as the milk is coming through. And we need to take that right through into operations and manufacturing. Now, today this is happening through automation and so on. But I think there's a much greater opportunity, because down to what Nora was saying earlier on, you're getting into the fine detail of the product. You're measuring, in our case, things like protein and fat and so on. And if you want to be very efficient within that process, then if you can feed this back into the automation. But more importantly, to Paul's point, it's about traceability as well. And if you have that level of granularity, then you can trace the product and see where it came from the farm and right in. And the challenge is coming, as I say, from the consumer and from the multinational food companies and beverage companies that we feed. For example, you know, supplying infant formula or baby food into China. Today, they want to know exactly what farm it came from. So the consumer is looking up on the product and seeing what source this came from. And we have a fantastic advantage here in Ireland from that perspective, because our cows are out in grass much longer than other countries around the world. So that traceability is now being demanded. And I think this is where the Internet of Things and that whole, the sensors, it's already started on the farm. You know, when I visited that farm last weekend, the cow had the sensor on the ear. The farmer automatically, when that cow came in to be milked, was turned away if it had been within the last 2 hours, because she wasn't due for milking again. Because she was going to get fed from the feed that already there was traceability in the feed stuff that was coming to that cow. And so on and so on. So it's getting more granular all through the whole traceability. And this is what this is where I think the Internet of Things can be a major plus.
Great. And Dennis, can you take that conversation a little further? We were speaking last night about automation, and we were talking about the rise of the machines, everything from self-driving tractors to knowing exactly how much water is in the ground, which is something for, you know, thousands of years has been a huge issue for farmers.
Well, in California, we know the answer. There's no water. So we're clear on that. But, you know, up until a couple of weeks ago, if you had asked somebody from our valley what was on your mind, it was, there's no water, there's no water. And then recently, a couple of weeks ago, we hit a sustained $20 lettuce market. And some of the biggest companies in the valley that John alluded to did not have the labor to get it out of the ground, and the millions of dollars of strawberries that have been left in the ground in recent years, because you simply cannot access labor, have really defined, I think, what's uppermost on Salinas Valley production agriculture's mind now, and that is, I used the phrase mechanization. I was quickly corrected, robotics. But the bottom line is we're at the front end of the era of technology and innovation is not new to agriculture, and in our valley for decades there's been innovation, but it's typically been about the product, whether it's top icing, the ability to go to the freezer, vacuum cooling, packaging, film technology that allowed the packaged salad industry to get going. But today, that innovation is going to be focused in the field, because we simply are not going to have the labor pool we need. And to some degree, you can't go halfway in on labor. You have to go all in to whatever your solution is. So this issue of automation, robotics, mechanization is really going to drive the specialty vegetable industry. And what's unique to our valley is we have some 34 plus crops that are million dollar crops. So it's not a one-size-fit-all answer, as much like it may be in the Midwest, where you have the big commodities and staples and that sort of thing. So automation is really going to be uppermost in our mind.
Interesting. Nora, you had spoken a little bit about thinking about food differently. A big part of that equation is the waste, and you refer to it as co-product?
Yeah, co-product.
Okay.
Byproduct, yeah.
Co-product. And so I'd be interested in how Nuratas is addressing that issue, and then we can bring Pat into the conversation again. How is Kerry's? You know, this has got to be a tremendous issue for a company like Kerry's.
Yeah, I think it's something very interesting that I didn't know about when I first started technology. And I realized talking to companies, multinational food companies, that they had a lot of co-product that they were either throwing away or selling at very low price. And basically, if you think about it, if you think of the journey between your food source and the end consumer's food, there's a lot of steps that go along that way. And one of the major drivers behind that is the conversion rate. So how much of this initial source material is converted to an end product that the consumer will eat. And I thought very often it would be in the 100%, but actually what I realized talking to companies is that that conversion rate is actually very low. It can go from 20 to 80% depending on the industry. So what this means is that certain industries, like the algae industry, only use about 20% of the biomass, of the algae biomass, and the rest is thrown away. In the meat industry, it's about 75%, 80%, the rest is thrown away. In the milk dairy industry, they have ratios there as well. And then my question to the companies was, are these byproducts, are these toxic? Why are you throwing away these products? And their answer was, well, we don't know what to do with them. We don't have any new uses for them. So we're currently using our technology to look at those byproducts and add value. So we take a value-less product and turn it into a value-add product. And we do this through our technology by identifying new ways these companies could use their ingredients, their byproduct, by identifying new healthy benefits within these ingredients that they then can sell off for a higher price with a new use. And this is very important because it's sustainable. We can't, increasing population size is huge, it's massive, as John Harnett alluded to earlier. And it's very important that that conversion rate reaches 100% or close to 100%. So what we're trying to do at Nuritas is trying to push that conversion rate towards 100%, but also for different industries, but also while doing so, creating life-changing ingredients that are going to help consumers live healthier and for longer. And currently we're working with quite a few multinational companies around the world, partnering with them, taking their co-product and transforming that into a value-add healthy ingredient. Yep, so that's...
And I suppose that co-product or byproduct that comes off, if you don't get that value out of it, then it's waste, and there's a cost in that waste. And we in Kerry, over the lifetime of Kerry, we started off, bear in mind milk is about 88% water, and we were getting X% out of that, and the rest of the Y% was being, it was waste and costing us money. But over the years, we've perfected that, and that is now working its way into very high-tech products that we have in Kerry, and that's, I suppose, what separates Kerry from our competitors. And working with people like Nora and so on, that journey hasn't ended yet. It's now got down to the molecular level of the product and breaking that down further and less waste. So the goal is to have zero waste and that. And milk is a very good example of what you're talking about.
And the story about the whey story, which is a story I always talk about, it's a part that I worked a lot in whey, which is a byproduct of cheese making. So when companies like Kerry make cheese, they're left with a byproduct, which is a transparent water that 15 years ago was thrown away. It was waste. It wasn't toxic, it was actually very nutritional, but they didn't know what to do with it. And then they discovered, through many years of research, they discovered that this byproduct had a very important health benefits, such as muscle growth and even blood pressure lowering agents and killing bacteria and so forth, and they started selling it that way. And now it's a $6.4 billion industry, and that's just the protein part of whey, which was zero 15 years ago.
And I remember as a young guy, the farmers coming home from the creamery that have left the fat behind, they were bringing this home to feed it to the calves and the pigs and so on. And now it's a $6 billion over the last 40 years due to the technology that companies like us have developed, and with the help of Nora and research and so on, that we brought this to this level, and obviously getting the extra value out of the milk.
Let's talk a little bit, has agriculture and has the farming industry, has it been slow to embrace new technology? I mean, we're talking now that, or has this evolution really been taking place for years and decades?
I'm very surprised to see, because if you think of food, it's something that coexisted with us since we started living on Earth. and we know so little about it. And the same with farming. It's a very old area, and yet technology, I think it's one of the fields that's adapting to technology, I think, the least compared to other fields. And it's always hard to bring in technology to something old, because people don't realize that they have a problem. So they first need to realize they have the problem, and then they find a way to solve it. So yes, initially when I was talking to food companies, this is going back maybe 4 years ago, about looking at the molecules and discovering new therapeutic benefits. For them, it was this sounds great, but it's really, really far away. This is like science fiction. But then, in the past 2.5 years, things have moved on so much. The consumers now are looking for healthy alternatives. They're wanting to take charge of their diets and control of their health. Governments are pushing towards that as well, and food companies are now realizing that they need novel ways to increase the health benefit of their products. So they're taking in technology much better now and adapting to it.
Caroline and Dennis, if you could talk to us a little bit about, we've been focused on the farmer of the future and the farm of the future. It seems to me, as a former journalist and analyst, I've had a hard time taking in everything that is going on and taking place and the amazing pace of change. Is it to the point where the farmers are going to have to be going back and getting their engineering degrees, or get their bioscience degrees? It seems in some ways very complex. Are you hiring a CTO to help you through it? How does it work from a producer level? I
think that there's challenges, because I think it's the support companies around farming that drive a lot of this technology development, because you want improvements. There's a number of companies out there that are helping, but basically, each company is going out looking at the support companies for what's the best program to run my ventilation on, what's the best irrigation I can find, what's the best solution. So farmers themselves aren't necessarily coming up with the solutions, they are coming up with the problems, and mechanization is a significant, or robotics is a significant issue. Water use, I don't know, in the future, are we going to need drones instead of bees? What is that? The problems are there, and it's the support companies that are really helping. And that is one of the things that we've tried to create ourselves in the software we're doing. So we have an expertise on farming in some areas, and we're creating a support company to support other businesses.
Is there a way to share that, your expertise and what you're learning, and is there the genuine desire to share that with others, or is it a competitive advantage?
It probably is a competitive advantage. We're sharing that through licensing our software and using our software. We also do consultancy and stuff like that, but it is something we're building because we have this expertise, and the more we travel around the world, we get to see, actually, in Ireland and the UK, we have kind of developed this expertise that we can share and improve, but there's 50 other things, each piece within a farm, that you need this expertise. So how does irrigation keep getting better? How does all the various support functions keep getting better? And then you look at the waste side, then you look at a number of things. So I don't think a farmer is going to reinvent everything, but each one will come up with some idea which will push their support company to develop something for them.
And Dennis, how crop specific is it and how region specific is it? In putting together the summit we're doing July 8th and 9th in Salinas, I was startled by the dichotomy to when I was talking to Midwestern farmers, and I'm probably going to get the terminology wrong, row crops, versus what you're doing in the Salinas Valley. So are the solutions, do the solutions span, or are the solutions in many cases very much crop or region specific?
Well, I think one of the things to that question is, if you look at the Salinas Valley, you've kind of got a separation of traditional commodity growers, shippers, so that may be head lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, et cetera. But then we house the major processors that 4 or 5 companies really drive value-added processing throughout North America, and they all touch the Salinas Valley in one manner or another. And I think, and you've got retail consolidation. So in terms of regulatory compliance, there's pretty fair commonality across the country. And I think the one thing that, and you asked the question of, do folks look for a competitive advantage? You cannot find a competitive advantage around food safety because the weakest link brings down the entire food chain. And it occurred to me as you were asking the question, where our valley is probably heading is we're pretty competitive, but we're probably beginning to track like the wine industry, where if you talk to the vintners, they'll say we're pretty good about cooperating on production related issues because there's a certain commonality there in terms of going to the trade, but we're going to beat the heck out of each other on products, or my Chardonnay versus that Chardonnay, or labeling, or that sort of thing. So I think technology is going to bring a certain amount of cooperation in terms of how we set up shop on the infrastructure side, because the thing that processors do, because we have so many family farms, is you may grow for Taylor Farms, you may grow for Fresh Express, and you may grow for Ready Pack, and after a while there can't be any separation. So you have to be together even on a large scale, like Monterey County, where we grow 250,000 acres a year.
Mm-hmm. Nora, when you're looking at it from a startup perspective and what you're building, do you start out with a global perspective, or do you start out with much more of a local, we want to solve these problems in Ireland, or we're going to solve these problems on a global basis?
We're working globally, so the companies we're working with are global. They're all over the world. Very few are Irish. It's solving a humanity problem. So it's solving a global problem through looking at food, understanding the data in food. And again, I think something I missed out on saying earlier, I think when I say people don't understand food, it really is a big problem, because everything you eat has billions of molecules within, and how those interact with the human body is totally unknown now, completely unknown, to say that we, again, coexisted with food for many years. So understanding that data, making sense of that data, and creating novel ways to help people is what we're working at. So it's global. So it's not on an Irish basis.
Forbes, we just did a summit 3 weeks ago in Detroit, and we were looking at how the city of Detroit was really trying to remake itself. After decades of decline, it's now rising again like a phoenix as a center of innovation, and it's becoming a tech hub, believe it or not. Do you feel the agricultural industry as a whole, is it attractive? Is it attractive to students coming out of university? And are they looking at this? And obviously they can't go and buy, they can't go buy 200 acres. Maybe they came from a farm family, but do we see it as a viable career opportunity? And are graduates coming out and saying, I want to get involved in agriculture and this is where I want to make my mark?
Well, from my perspective, the Bay Area is really emerging as a real scene where food and technology intersect. And to me, this generation, and particularly if you look at the Silicon Valley, food's the new wine. So that means it's hot, it's hip, and you're looking at a lot of different people are extraordinarily interested in where their food comes from, and frankly, more and more people are interested in getting involved in that process. So I think the area of food and food-related opportunities are going to be perceived as very attractive career opportunities.
Because the last century's asset was all about oil. And this century, it's not about technology only, it's not about apps, it's about food and water. So yes, I think there's a huge opportunity there. Anything that can create better water, better food is huge.
And I think to an earlier point, Paul, attracting people into the agribusiness, and if I look at the neighbour I spoke about that has automated his farm, he has got a degree in technology, and he's coming back in, and I see more of this happening. And I think what's happening as well from an Irish perspective is that a lot of the people are travelling to other parts of the world. And we in Kerry, for example, many of the people we have in the research have come from an agricultural background. They're coming into our industry and take that experience they've learned on the farm and bring it right through to understand the things that Nora is talking about.
Great.
Yeah. And I have to say, yeah, I think in Ireland food is becoming more popular. So you can see more people doing different courses. And again, it's not just agriculture. There's a lot of different areas that you can come in and support and build a business. So we're trying to bring people from maybe more marketing background. So we're taking people from the multinationals like Unilever, Mars, those kind of places, but also developers, etc., and trying to merge them together to create a better business.
Terrific. I see we've run out of time. I just want to thank all our panelists. It was an excellent discussion. Thank you very much.
So just a couple observations from that fantastic panel discussion. You know, we talked quite a bit about sort of scientific analysis all the way down to the molecular level and understanding food production, understanding the analysis of that. We talked quite a bit about traceability. I would even expand traceability to go into transparency of food production overall. So I think we're seeing more and more consumer demand on transparency about where their food is grown, how their food is grown, how things are produced. We talked quite a bit, particularly with Nora, about byproduct analysis and looking at kind of life-changing opportunities based on that. I mean, that's such a win-win opportunity, right? And finally, we talked about some of the challenges of technology adoption in the agricultural sector. It's no coincidence that this next panel session that we have is very heavily focused on big data and cloud analysis, because we feel like there is tremendous amounts of information from the ag tech sector that actually needs to be analyzed properly, that actually requires kind of the big data analytics. We've got an all-star panel that we've assembled here, and I'd like to welcome each of them out to the stage in turn, starting with Jeff Castleton, General Manager of Amazon Data Services.